You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the Resistance. Tuesday, April 2nd. We're live right here. I'm Dean Obeidallah. Hope to be here on BFF. That man is mad if you're watching on Facebook.com. No, don't ham it up. That's my producer. We do Facebook.com/Dean of Radio. You can watch the Open, and he runs away and puts a little clip up. If you look at Facebook.com/Dean of Radio, you will see Matt there and what he's up to every show, and it's just part of the workings here of what's going on. I'm on Twitter, though, nonstop, where also you can watch the opening monologue now. We have it up there on Twitter, live streaming, at Dean Obeidallah. So, a lot to talk about. But first, a little help from our friend Stephen Colbert. Here's Colbert last night talking about what if Donald Trump were to close the Mexican border as he is threatening. Here's clip number 1, please.
Closing the border would not be a good thing. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. and Mexico trade about $1.7 billion in goods daily. And the decision would threaten 5 million American jobs, which is why they called it an unmitigated economic debacle. To which Trump said, "Thanks so much. I've always said America's economy has too much buckle. It is our job to de-buckle it." But even worse, experts say, if imports from Mexico were stopped today, Americans would run out of avocados in 3 weeks. Holy like a guacamole.
The no avocados in 3 weeks scares more Americans than you would realize. That's the reality of what goes on here. By the way, Donald Trump said today about closing the border, he raised the stakes. I'm not kidding. I'm not going to play his stupid voice. You can trust me on this. He said he will close the southern border unless ending chain migration and the visa lottery program. Folks, chain migration, which is family unification, and the visa lottery program have nothing to do with the southern border. That has to do with asylum applications and illegal crossings. Chain migration, which is again family unification, and the visa lottery program are legal immigration. What Donald Trump is saying now, he's trying to tie even stopping legal immigration to the border. Why, folks? It's all about preserving white supremacy, period. That's the only reason you end legal migration. That is it. It is white supremacy, and let's call it what it is because the stakes are too high in the time of Trump to play games. That's what we need. And then here was Colbert on Trump threatening to end aid to 3 the Northern Triangle countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And he references Colbert in this comedic bit, something Fox News put on their screen. And he's not joking. This is really what Fox News put on their screen in regards to Trump threatening to end funding to 3 Central American countries. Here's clip number 2, please.
A lot of these asylum seekers come from Central American countries further south. So to punish those countries, Trump has officially taken steps to cut off aid to Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Or, as was reported by Fox News, Trump cuts U.S. aid to 3 Mexican countries. That's right. Well, now we know why Mexico didn't pay for the wall. Trump only asked one of the Mexicos. I'm sure the other 2 would chip in, cut the cost.
And that's exactly what the chyron or the words were on the Fox and Friends television coverage was Trump to end funding aid to 3 Mexican countries. So to Fox News and the world of white supremacy, all brown people are Mexican. Don't you get it, folks? There's no Honduras or Guatemala or Peru or Colombia. You're all Mexican. Anything below Texas is Mexican. That's what they are. It is remarkable. And today, though, is an important day. And I want to talk about what today represents and why it's important and why Republicans have done everything they could to undermine this while Democrats have led the charge to make it happen. And today is Equal Pay Day. Equal Pay Day originated in 1996 as a public awareness move to illustrate the gap between what men and women make for the same exact job. The problem did not begin in 1996. Just the concept of Equal Pay Day and using that term, which was trending all day on social media, that came into existence in 1996 and has gotten more and more known each year. Here are a couple of people I want to play clips from the cable news world explaining Equal Pay Day, what it means, and why it's now in early April. Here's first on CNN, Christine Romans on it, clip number 3.
This is the day today that, on average, the statistical woman will catch up with what a man made for 2018. Takes her all the way into April of 2019 to make what the typical man doing the same job made last year. So that's what this equal pay day is really all about. Women making 80 cents for every man's dollar. And when you look, Pappy, you're so right. Over the course of a 40-year career, look at the disparities for women, different kinds of women, different categories or sectors of women. Women overall earn about $400,000 less than men because they're paid a little bit less year after year. Latino women, a lot less, and black women about $950,000. You know, companies have been working hard to address this, you guys, ever since I've been working, right? This has been a topic of conversation. Pregnancy discrimination, sexual harassment, how women negotiate different than men. Companies are working hard to try to be more transparent on how they pay people. Some cities and states, even a few, have decided that they are making it illegal to ask a candidate for a job, what did you make at your last job? Because for women, that means they will always make a little bit less. It never levels the playing field there. But we got a lot of work to do.
So that was Christine Romans. And then here's Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC talking to Senator Gillibrand. And Stephanie Ruhle is, you can hear the emotion and the anger and the exasperation. And why is this gap not closed? She's been in the business for years. Them talking about this in the media. And still we have this gap. And here's the spoiler alert. The Republicans are playing a big role in why we continue to have a pay gap in this country. And I'll go through it. That's not just opinion because we're on the Progressive Channel. This is reality. I'll share why. But here's Stephanie Ruhle with Senator Gillibrand today. Clip number 4, please.
It's Equal Pay Day. It is a day that symbolizes that it takes this many months into the new year for women to make the same amount of money as men. We are still 80 cents to a man's dollar, 61 cents for African American women, 53 cents for Latina women. What gives?
We still, as a country, are struggling to value women, and we see it across the board. We don't have equal pay for equal work, and if you're a woman of color, you will earn even less. The fact that we don't have national paid leave or affordable daycare or universal pre-K, basic structural changes that would make it possible for more women to work at their fullest economic potential. It's a drag on the U.S. economy. Not paying women equal pay for equal work means the economy is less strong. It means that for 40% of the workplace, they're not actually earning what they would be earning if they were a white man. It's a problem. It's a real issue. And so we as legislators and you as an advocate and someone who reveals the truth in the news, we have to keep speaking out about it because it's just not right. And it's hurting the U.S. economy.
So there was Senator Gillibrand and Stephanie Ruhle, I'm sorry. Here's the reality, folks. Equal Pay Day means, on average, for the typical woman, she had to work all of last year and all the way through this year, today, April 2nd, to make as much as the average man in the same job made just last year. That's the world we live in. And has it gotten better over years? Yeah, it's gotten a little bit better. But still, you heard those statistics. And these are from the New York Times today, the breakdown of equal pay for women. Overall, on average, women, it's around 80 cents to $1 of man working the same type of jobs. When you break it down, it's far worse than that. Actually, white women, according to this year's statistics, 77 cents on the dollar to a man for the same. This is all comparable jobs, men and women. For African American women, it's far worse than 77 cents on the dollar. It's 61 cents, meaning black women get paid 61 cents to the dollar that a white man gets for the same job. Native American women get 58 cents, and Latina women, the worst, 53 cents. 53 cents. If you're Latina, on average, you are getting paid 53 cents for the dollar the white man gets for the same job. And the states are the worst. Louisiana had the worst pay gap ratio on average of 69%. And California, the best of women getting paid 89% of what men get. So obviously it's an average around the nation, Louisiana on the low end. And here's one and by the way, it's broken down. It's remarkable if you read the articles today out there. This infiltrates every profession. You might be thinking, well, it might be low skill jobs or maybe labor jobs type of thing where you're working. No, it's everything. It's from those jobs all the way up to lawyers, accountants, and doctors, where they see this pay disparity, where women get paid less than men. And when I said earlier, Donald Trump and the GOP are trying to prevent equal pay, that is not an exaggeration. And that when I say Democrats are the ones leading the charge for equal pay for women, that's not an exaggeration either. In fact, that's exactly, let's go back in time in history. The first legislation to deal with addressing the issue of unequal pay based on gender, 1963, President John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Law, which made it illegal to pay women lower rates for the same job as men. Did it make a difference? Yes. Did it end it? Not even close. At that time, on average, women were getting 59% to the dollar that men were getting for the same job. So women getting 59%. It continued on. The next big piece of legislation in trying to close the pay gap, 2009, President Barack Obama, his first piece of legislation he proudly signed into law, you might recall, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, and that was essentially overturning a Supreme Court decision and not getting the legalese of it, but basically it made it easier for women to bring a lawsuit against their employer when they found out they were being paid less than male counterparts for the same jobs. In 2014, there was a push in the Senate to try to enact new legislation to close this gap. What happened then? Senate Republicans unanimously blocked legislation on equal pay. The bill would have made it illegal for employers to punish workers who discussed their salaries. But then President Obama in 2014, because Congress, Senate wouldn't work with him, the House wouldn't work with him, it's all Republicans then, he signed as an executive order the Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces executive order. In it, two parts of it addressed this very issue. The goal was to close the pay gap. It had to do with federal contracts because he can control that by executive order. And it banned the idea of it. Both of them, not to get details of it, but both of them were about making it easier for women to know there's transparency, to make sure they know they're getting paid the same as their male counterparts. That was a great thing in 2014. Who would be against it? Donald Trump. In 2017, on March 27, 2017, Donald Trump revoked President Obama's 2014 Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces order. Again, an order to protect women, to try to make it easier for them to know when they're being paid less and to have gender equality in the workplace. Trump didn't want that. And last week, on Thursday, the Democratically controlled House passed the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would make it harder for employers to justify gender-based pay disparities. It passed the House. How many Republicans of the nearly 200 Republicans in the House do you think voted for this? 7. The rest voted against pay equality for women. Look, it's not a game. This is the reality. Democrats have led the charge to close the gap between what women and men get. As Senator Gillibrand said, in our society, we do not value the work of women. That's the bigger issue at play. Well, Democrats do, and Republicans don't. And to make it worse, you'll say, well, why? Why don't they? It's sort of like climate change, and they're denying reality. And there was a poll that came out today. Nearly 50% of men, folks, get ready for this. Nearly 50% of men believe the pay gap is, quote, made up. Any doubt those are Trumpers? And of that, 24% actually said the media reports of men and women being paid unequally are, quote, fake news. Fake news. This is where we are. Republicans for years have attacked everything that dealt with paying women equally. I don't know if it goes back to the fact that they're just chauvinistic. I don't know if it goes back, the roots are even deeper. And this is not a slight on Christianity in any stretch of the imagination, but evangelicals believe in the Bible literally. And in Timothy in the New Testament, it says a woman should be subservient to the man. She should learn in silence and not teach a man. Is that why? Or does it say in the Bible that the man's the head of the household? And so that in their mind, men should get more? Or is it just societal? Does it forget any kind of religion? I don't have the answer to that. What I do, and I read numerous articles today proposing different ways to close this gap, because it's a horrifically unfair gap. And Iceland, by the way, last year, this is one of the proposals to make this law in America. In Iceland right now, it's really remarkable, the new law they passed last year. If you have 25 employees or more, you have to prove, the burden's on you to prove that you're paying your men and women equally. That demands transparency of what you're paying people, so everyone knows what they're getting paid. Other more or less legislative-based proposals to remedy this situation is the idea of employers offering pay transparency, that you go to your workplace and say, you don't have to put names, but here's what the salaries of men in this department for these jobs, and here's the salary of women. You all know what it is. Also, as you heard Christine Romans earlier in that clip talk about, that women, if they're asked what their salary is and it's already a pay gap involved, it furthers the pay gap. by continuing to base it off that salary. So now places like New York City have made it illegal for employers to ask women what they got paid at their other job. What does it matter what you got paid before? You're at a job interview. You're like, this is what I want to be paid to come here. Doesn't matter. So if you're basing their payoff already 20%, 30%, 40% less than men, you're furthering and perpetuating that gap by knowing what they made and going, well, I'll beat what you got paid, but you're not paying fairly. The third part here, and I really like this one in many articles, said share your stories. Change won't happen if we don't talk about this publicly. And that's what I'd love to hear from you. You're my guest, as we usually do in this hour on the show. So it could be about any topic. But if you're a woman and you've had a situation where you knew you were paid less than a man for the same job or comparable job, what did that do? How did that make you feel about your job, about your desire to work harder, the idea of fairness? What was the frustration like? Or even if you didn't know it, but you had an inkling, you had a sense, men were being paid more for the same exact job simply because of their gender. How did that make you feel? Have you ever confronted this issue in the workplace? And if you have, what have you done? Have you ever seen it work to the betterment of women who have complained about it? Share these stories. I think it's important because we can't hope for Congress, especially this dysfunctional Republican Senate. Because that, by the way, the House bill, the Paycheck Fairness Act, is never going to get a vote in the Senate. Even though it overwhelmingly passed the Democrats and 7 whole Republicans supported it in the House, Mitch McConnell's not going to bring it for a vote. So it will not get light of day. It's up to us. So if you have a story, I'd love to hear if you're a woman, if you were victimized by this, how did it make you feel? Share that story, the human impact of knowing you got paid less because of your gender. How much frustration?
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Whoever's the next president, we should call him the 45th president of the United States. And this will go down as a dark time in America that we'll never refer to again.